I'd like to begin by actually reading out a little bit of what was sent to me from a victim. I've worked with victims of enforced disappearance, so this is a BNP activist who was picked up and then disappeared for a very brief period, after which a case was filed against him under the then Digital Security Act. And he said that so I'll read it out. 5 বছরে 4টি ডিজিটাল নিরাপত্তা আইন মামলায় সিএমএম কোর্ট, মহানগর দায়রা জজ আদালত এবং হাইকোর্টে 205 বার হাজিরা দিতে হয়েছে। কোনো সপ্তাহে 4 দিনই আদালতে যেতে হয়েছে, এমনকি জামিনে থাকা অবস্থায় র্যাবের রিমান্ডে যেতে হচ্ছে। What this essentially means is that he had to appear before a magistrate at least 4 times a week. The way the law was used was to file cases against you, and it was never intended for those cases to succeed. It was well understood they wouldn't, but the harassment was the point. Surprisingly, the same has begun happening with the Cybersecurity Act, even though the preamble of the Act says that the reason the Act is being put in front of Parliament is because the previous law was used to harm freedom of expression. It is therefore very ironic that the Act itself is being used. But this is not a flaw of the Act, I would like to point out, because the 2 sections that are being used, 25 and 26, don't actually... Cyber Protection, yes. Now it's called Cyber Protection Act. The 2 sections that are being used, 25 and 26, actually do not allow law enforcement to do what they're doing. You can arrest somebody for speech offense in 2 instances, for sexual harassment, and the other is if it directly incites violence and leads to violence of that kind. I can give examples of 7 people who've been picked up as yet in a period of 29 days. So that's every 4 days 1 person has been picked up. And they are random people. So 35-year-old housewife, 16-year-old student, 22-year-old student, and they're spread across the country. So we have from Moymanshing, Munshinganj, Bhola, Thakurgaon. It's well spread out, and it's in a very short period. What it does, it sends a message to people that you cannot speak. So I went through what they had posted, which resulted in this reaction, right? What was it that they're posting that resulted in law enforcement arriving at their doors and filing these cases against them? You'd be surprised how it's very innocuous. They're jokes, and they're not particularly good jokes either, and they may offend the sensibilities of many. It is well understood. I think one of the jokes was calling a minister somebody who smokes weed. I mean, I can understand why the minister would feel offended by it, but whether it would necessarily require picking up a 16-year-old and filing a case against him remains very, very debatable. And it is further debatable because what we're celebrating, what I've seen being celebrated, is that all of these cases, the victims, if one can say, are getting bail. And people celebrate it. They go like, oh, okay, it's different from the previous era because they're all getting bail. And that's true, they are getting bail. But I want to highlight the experience of the BNP activists from the previous era and say the getting bail is nearly the start of the story and not the end of the story. Once they get bail, they have to keep appearing in front of a court. They don't have the money for it. They have multiple cases filed against them in various jurisdictions, and they do not have the money to appear. They don't have money for getting lawyers. Their livelihoods are disrupted, their studies are disrupted. It has happened over and over again. Our caseload at the Commission was about 2,000 cases, give or take. And then the survivors, the vast majority of survivors had false cases filed against them. And they would come to us and complain of the one thing that said, please do something about our cases because we cannot financially afford appearing before the court so many times. It is therefore quite difficult for us to see a return to a similar regime. It is not an identical regime, I want to highlight this. And I will end by saying this, that I think on the 2nd of May, the Prime Minister said this will not happen further and that the government will not keep picking people up for speech offenses, because the Cyber Protection Act is not a lèse-majesté act like Thailand, for instance. It's a very different format. So he has said this. It would be good if that is actually implemented, and a secondary message goes to law enforcement at the same time that I remember you said that there is no legal definition for disinformation in many countries, because as you said, it would require establishing a Ministry of Truth. It is not simply possible. The thing is, the things that were being posted by these 7 people don't even fall under disinformation and under any even broad definition of disinformation. It's what we would call in Bangla অরুচিকর kotha. But that's it, really. I mean, to be arrested for orochikar kotha when you're like a 22-year-old, it's an insane activity. I would hope that going forward, I do not have any criticism of these sections of the law. I think the sections of the law are fine. But the way they're being used right now does not make any sense. They're being used as if the previous law still exists when it does not. Thank you.